I hope we're recording.
I hope that was a good intro.
Yeah. You're listening to episode
183.
Graveyard Shift. How are you, gentlemen?
Doing good, gentleman.
So you're doing good or you're doing well? You are like actively doing good things, or your English isn't great?
No, I'm gonna stick actually. I'm doing good. I am doing good.
Nice.
Doing well
Good.
will be another answer.
Brag much?
Yeah.
Like, I'm amazing. I'm helping everyone.
Well, you just lost your treasure in heaven, but I hope you're satisfied.
That's never going to happen
That's
anyway.
your theology.
Yeah. What is that theology anyway, Scott? Come on.
I mean, it's definitely twisted. Yeah, I'm not saying I'd. I'm not saying it's going to be my next essay in my master's.
I think it's best to ask for Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin will go furthest to heaven. I've got a hunch.
Yeah. Angel coin.
Yet again, my internet's saying that my theology is unstable, so I'm not going to answer or respond.
I love how the internet knows more than the Holy Spirit.
I know, it's unbelievable. It's scary, actually. Oh, boy.
So you're doing good, Al?
Yeah, no, not too bad. Not too bad. It's been a rough
Stop.
week.
Also busy?
Busy?
You guys have been busy this week?
Yeah. Have I been? Yeah, it's like Tuesday.
Good. Okay.
Yeah. We have all these devotionals that we do for the church and whatnot.
The reason why I say it, Al, is because you always answer it's busy. So I was just being sarcastic. Donald Trump's taught me a thing or two about sarcasm recently. So
your sarcasm was a lot more evident than Donald Trump's.
Yeah.
Not sarcasm, the big liar. Anyways, Alan.
Let's discuss that some other time. Yeah, no, it's been good. I mean,
Why is it tough though?
It's yeah, I think just there's been other stuff that's been going on, even family wise, that has been difficult in relation to just trying to balance everything that's going on and expectations and learning to be okay with the vulnerability of how things are, and having those moments. Like I was talking to Greg, I think I was saying this to you as well, like, just having those lull moments and kind of going, it's okay to have a lull, it's okay to kind of feel crap, it's okay not to be enjoying this, and at the same time there are moments I'm really enjoying this, just for the time and the space, and being able to kind of get your head cleared from a whole lot of other different stuff, but also I suppose the wrestle of the guilt of, well, what else could be done. You're hearing of other different places, and people are getting into such a zone now of, this could be a movement, #COVID, and we want to get things out, and say, this is what we're doing because of this, and aren't we amazing? And you're kind of going, man, the pressure on just stupid. But yeah, so doing good and having moments of, just, so yeah, it's a Wolverine sort of day. So I'll be nice to you, but if you irritate me,
I'm not sure. Oh, I see. The claws are going to come out. Got it. What about you, Scott? What are you up to? That sounds exactly like Wolverine.
I just wanted to bring it back to cute and fuddly again, cute and cuddly boys.
Yeah, it got too dark there at the end.
Yeah.
Doing all right. The last few weeks has been, I mean, I think I've said it on the show before, but like learning a lot of new skills in terms of editing for, trying to figure out a digital response for faith stuff in the coronavirus. That has meant a lot of like, there's nothing better than when you're 3/4 of the way through your 9 o'clock lecture on Sunday morning, and you get an email from somebody that says the service that you just spent 8 hours producing and editing is only 24 minutes long, and the original version was 57, and you have to re-upload a 3.7 gig file to YouTube because 25 people have already logged on and had their service cut short. So like, those moments you're just like, especially when they're coming over the weekend. And one of the things that I think is I was going to say hardest about the situation at the moment. Obviously, I'm talking within the spectrum of if I'm not being directly affected by the illness. You know, there are difficult things about being at home and being in lockdown and quarantine and stuff like that, but obviously they pale in the comparison to people who are, you know, out there heroically helping others. That's not what I'm doing. I'm doing my best to serve those I can, and doing my best to serve society by staying away from everyone else. And but in that, one of the challenges of lockdown is like it just feels like every day bleeds into another because there's no variety or rhythm. And so when even the time that you set aside as your weekend doesn't actually end up being a weekend, and everything, you know, you can just feel like you are at home 24/7, which means you feel like you're not working, but also working 24/7, which means you feel like you're not actually at home. So finding that rhythm is actually really difficult, and I think that'll probably be part of our conversation later on. But I'm doing okay, particularly as we're now into study week in UCD. So exams and assignments start next week. And most people are kind of the people who I would be working on, like the kind of personal development one-on-one stuff. They're kind of like, that's a self-actualization need. Whereas right now I'm just going for survival stuff. So I don't have the mental space at the moment to slow down to have that conversation because I need to get a bunch of things done. And so I don't have time for reflection right now. So part of the next few weeks will be building those relationships to continue those conversations during the summer. But the next few weeks, especially leading up to my own master's assignments, actually, is going to hopefully be a little bit less pressured. So I'm positive about that.
Wow. I mean, yeah, I think that it is an interesting time because you're right. You definitely find yourself. I find myself similar, where everything kind of bleeds together. Mm-hmm. So like, I spoke in Christchurch Cathedral 2 weeks ago or 2 Sundays ago, mm-hmm. And I think the first problem you have, Scott, is you're doing a 57-minute service. But I mean, so like, but even then, editing together, it ended up being a 7-minute talk with background, blah, blah, blah. And then, you get a call and they're like, can you make a litany of peace? I'm like, sure. What's a litany of peace?
If it's on Wikipedia, I can do it.
And so you spend the next 24 hours trying to figure out what the heck a litany of peace is, and you end up doing that, and it's great, Mm-hmm. And then I got a call on Friday. They had done a service to remember the Armenian genocide of 1915, and we're talking about like 1.5 million Armenians slaughtered. Mm-hmm. And so they done a service in the cathedral again, and asked me if I could edit it. I'm like, sure, what does it look like? And they sent me files. Now everybody's doing their best. Everybody's holding up their iPhones and they're trying to capture sound and light and image all at once. And it's not particularly doable consistently when you go from indoors to outdoors and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it took me 9 hours to pull together something that was hopefully honoring to the Armenian community. But not.
That's a high stakes one as well, to be done on the iPhone. Yeah. There is something different between we've got a couple of announcements for our congregation. Talking about the Armenian genocide, which is such a huge and actually often controversial subject, does mean you want to give it the best possible chance of being high quality.
And to be fair,
iPhone content doesn't necessarily lead to that.
But to be fair, they captured it, which I really respected. And so you do 9 hours of it, and you end up, it's 11:30 at night on a Friday night, and you're like, what happened to my day? And all of a sudden you're like, well then what do I work on Monday now? Because I always work flexi hours anyways, but even my flexi hours are taking a beating right now. They're like, what day is it? It's hard to just go boom, boom. And I think that actually I know the content today is going to be about how do we continually grow our faith and spiritual in isolation. But I generally think what you guys are saying, these are things that are directly in competition with growth. It's growth in a different way. It's growth in a different way, actually, because I think that I'm learning about myself even in this process. But I do know that for sure when it comes to like time, it just evaporates. I'll do 3 or 4 calls with young adults or artists, and the day is gone. You're like, what? How did the day go so quickly? Yeah. I mean, normally I can knock out 4 meetings over coffees in 4 meetings in an hour. I don't know. No, not really. But
it's about quality, not quantity.
Boom. No, but normally I could do that in the morning because you're kind of moving venues and there's a kind of a natural break, but on Zoom, which is not a complaint, you can just chat, which is actually kind of good in a way as well. But so I totally get that frustration, and I'm experiencing myself too.
Yeah. I think the other part of it, that the part that I find difficult in the pastoral care stuff is trying to make as much time as possible for that, because obviously this is, one of the few things that we can really continue to do well with people is be there for them. Yeah. And that's a huge part of my job anyway. Then the challenge is, when you're separated by a screen and people are back in home environments or whatever, you've worked so hard to cultivate a space in your office that is a place where they kind of come into, and when they do, they feel like they've crossed the threshold into a place that is safe, into a place where they can be listened to, in a place where they have muscle memory about talking about their story in a certain way. And just over Zoom and stuff like that, it is just not this. It is not the same dynamic, and I have to say I really miss that. I feel like the conversations aren't going to the same places they potentially could. So that's a new skill to be learning as well for me, is figuring out, okay, what does it mean for us to do this well? But we'll get there.
And also, like, practicing, like, as you well know, in conversations like these, silence is a huge part of it, where you just wait. You wait for you wait for the real vulnerability to fill the space. And when you're on Zoom, you're waiting, and they're like, "Did I lose you? Have I lost you?
Are you like, frozen?
Could you say that again?"
Exactly. No, I'm actively listening. So you end up doing too much nodding.
Or I keep telling them they're unstable and they can't hear me. I'm like, no, my internet. It's my internet that's unstable.
I've been trying to tell you that for years. Harry, for Scott, when you are dealing with so many people, I think this is what we're going to be talking through in relation to how, for you spiritually, are being looked after. As you're giving it, as you're connecting in with so many other different people, like who's connecting in with you? Do you know? Like, who actually have you got in? I know, walk away now. But what does that look like? We'll be back, folks, after this short break.
See, Alan filled the space. Let him fill the space.
Most of the the sunlight is absolutely caning me here. Okay, that's better. Yeah. I've always found that the best way in which I can care for myself is by surrounding myself with people who are having similar experiences. So colleagues, people who are working in pastoral care kind of roles, you guys, but in the space between the podcasts, like in coffees we grab and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And those are, so I haven't felt that same level of opportunity for support. And there's less of the kind of general, which I think does make life a little bit harder. The other side of it is that being at home does mean that I am actually rested in a way that means I'm not, I don't find myself being as drained relationally or spiritually. So so I also feel like I have more to offer in some ways. I'm probably, with my personality type, less in need of that support because I'm in the place where I feel most comfortable and where I feel like I thrive the most. So, swings and roundabouts on that one, I think, for myself.
Yeah.
So what would be like the things that you guys are doing to maintain good, good inner life, good physical life? Like, what are the things that you're engaging in, employing to maintain just a good personal well-being on every level right now in isolation?
I think, honestly, because we have so much time, I think, Scott, you said this even before we started recording, like, the desire all of us have in our busy life of saying, what I would do just to have some time out to kind of get away from everything. And ironically, here we all are in this time out, and then going, I just want time in. I want to get back in. I want to get back in. And this flip of what is it that has us so discontent, whether things are busy or whether things are a different type of busy. And I think for us here, family, 2 kids and a dog, and we're trying to maintain almost that sense of normality of weekends, staying up a little later, but during the week, kind of bringing it back in as if, okay, kids, you got school in the morning, so you need to be up, have your shower, breakfast, and you're getting school stuff done. Well, I don't have that much. Well, get up, get the shower, breakfast.
Are they still wearing uniforms?
Oh yeah, well, no, we make them. I walk around usually with my collar. You know, I've been preaching most mornings. But no, it's trying to keep that normal. I mean, the one thing I am enjoying that is different in how we're spending time well is even how we're having meals together. Normally, it's dinner. That'd be the meal that we're having together. But actually, in this time, we're doing breakfast together. And then we may do lunch at different stages, but we'll do dinner still always together, and that is going on longer, and conversations and stuff, and so that's really good. So trying to keep some form of a routine, and even for myself, I mean, I'd say 1 or 2 days where it's been, today's a PJ day. You know, Rue said to me, it was a couple of weeks ago, it's like 3 or 4 in the afternoon. She goes, so we're not getting dressed. No, I'm like, nope. Today is a lounge pants day, you know? And I think I think you need to be good and realistic for yourself to have those moments. But I also think there needs to be a healthy getting up, having your shower, you know, brush the teeth, get a bit of a walk, fresh air, you know, whether that be, if you have a dog, great. If you don't, just get out to the back garden or open a window and let light in, you know. And I do think actually there is something about if we sit in a room that it is dark, you're just going to feel that for the day. It's going to hang over you. Whereas if you do, as I'm not trying to get it to Scott, because you're trying to, get rid of all that light. Yeah. but that idea of actually getting it lovely, getting bright, you know, having routine, I think is really important, and checking in on one another, or at least having somebody else, you know, and talking to people who are living by themselves. I got a couple of phone calls last night with people in the church who are on their own, and just so aware that for some of them who are being put into this category of vulnerable, and they are not vulnerable, they are by their age by default, but in relation to health, they're nowhere near vulnerable. They kick my ass, you know, and I think that there's a
I'd like to see that.
Yeah, a lot of people. It could be our next fundraiser, but I think it's
I mean, I don't know why you need 2 parish halls, but we could build them both in that one fundraiser.
Hey, yeah, I mean, we bring the money in, but it's knowing what your boundaries, what they were before this, but then trying to see, well, what new things do we need to have in place to make sure that we stay in a healthy space, even in vulnerable moments. There still needs to be that healthy space.
So like when you talked about earlier, you said you get these lulls.
Mm-hmm.
What is that? How do you get yourself out of those lulls, or do you stay in them, or what do you do?
How do I get out of them? I get annoyed. If I get in a lull, I'm like, I hate this. I'm not liking this. I want to get out.
And that's like a negative emotional state, or is it kind of just like a cloud comes over?
Yeah. So sometimes the lull, it's a cloud. It's like, oh, this is just bleak. I'm not enjoying this. I want to get out. I want to go do so. I want to meet with somebody. And I think it's the sense of almost feeling trapped. Like, so I think, again, going back to what we would do to have that time out. And so, yay. But all of a sudden then kind of going, okay, I want now time out, but I'm told no. And so like, we had a moment last week where I could have abused. Clergy have a letter from the Archbishop to kind of say, if we're out and about, if we get stopped by the guards, here you go, show this and you're grand. And there was a moment last week where I could have actually abused that. Now, it would have been arguably for a good reason, but it, you know, there's that
the donuts in Dalgany are wonderful. That's what
so tempting. So
we were meeting for donuts, right? That's the reason.
Always donuts and prayer, people. I'll bring a donut back for the guard. They're all happy.
We all have a donut-shaped hole inside of us.
Yeah, that hole is getting bigger. You know? But I think it's trying to, it's reflecting back. You know what? Right now, this space is enough for Jesus, so it's enough for me. And so it's recentering and it's realigning. And the one thing, weirdly, that has really helped is I have a candle that I brought that I have in the office. And for some of those days that there's a lull, I light the candle to remind me that I'm not alone.
Wow.
And actually that's been quite helpful.
Huh.
And so there's silly, goofy things like that, but actually,
dude, no, you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to give a good idea and then say it's silly, goofy.
Also, if anyone's going to make fun of us, it's
us.
If anyone's going to make fun of you, it's going to be us. You don't get to take that away from us. That's like 60% of the reason I do this podcast.
Right. That's more the point, Scott. That's more the point.
Okay, I'm sorry, but yeah, this is deep and meaningful, and yeah, I'm loving. No, but I am.
You touched on something there.
You're not alone.
Oh, I hope it's still recording.
No, it's all right. I'm done.
No, please, come on.
Yeah, no, I think it is like routine is important, and for me, it's important to kind of actually keep that. And even in the routine, there's moments of feeling a lull, and that's okay. And sometimes the lull is fine. The lull is like, this is normal, this is okay, and I don't fight it. And kind of going, it's okay not to feel yay about this. They're few and far between, but when they hit, they kind of bring your mind into different spaces in ways you're going, I don't know what I really want to go down that road today. So yeah, but routine is good. Routine is important.
One of the things I like about that candle idea is the idea that it's defining segments of time into times when the candle is lit and times when the candle is not lit. And I think there was this assumption in me that I would be more present to myself and more present to God if I was home all the time, because obviously, but the candle's not lighting as regularly as I thought it would be, because like too much of something like being in the same space, it's very often the same thing. Like if you ever have summer holidays, like where you have to take time off, but you don't actually get to go anywhere.
Yeah.
It's inevitable that by the end of that week or whatever, you're just like, how did I waste this whole time? Like, I don't even remember how it passed. And I think for me, like, that's what the last month feels like. And so anything that I think marks time in, time out is really, really helpful. It's kind of like, have you guys ever been to an all-you-can-eat Brazilian steakhouse?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So the green, red.
Yeah.
So there's this, it's like it's a stick with a green end. It sits by itself, but it's got a green end and a red end. And depending on whether or not you want them to come around with a trolley of meat, you have the green up and they'll come and serve you more meat, and then you put on the red when you want them to stop.
Why would there be a red end? That's my question.
That's what I asked when I was in Idaho. That was the first time I'd ever gone to something like that, and they still talk about me being like a kid in a candy shop. The other thing that I find very helpful is trying to practice gratitude just at this moment.
Absolutely.
Being able to look around and say, okay, it can be so easy to kind of get into pity party mode. And I'm not saying choose gratitude instead of being present to your own emotions, because I think you need time to do that as well. But I do find it very helpful just to name the things that I feel blessed with at the moment, and that's it. It's a simple thing, but just taking time to do it, it really does help it helps build compassion towards others as well as dismantling my own entitlement. So I'm trying to do that. And then I've also found trying to pray during this time can be really overwhelming, because you're like, where do I start and stop? Like, it's one thing when you have a particular kind of, a few situations of people who, and that you care about, who you're praying for. But like, what do you do? That feels like shooting a water gun. And now it feels like this is a tidal wave. It's like, right. So, which then I think as well can also turn into almost like well, how could I even stop praying? You know what I mean? Because there's so many situations, and we've got a prayer train going in church. And so we all take different times during the day. And sometimes I've been able to make the time I've committed to, and other times I'm not. And there's, frustration and guilt that comes with that. One of the things that I found very helpful actually is I've actually grabbed, I've started doing the late evening office from the Book of Common Prayer. Sure. And I never thought that one day, if you told me 20 years ago that I'd be sitting by myself praying the late evening office, I'd be like, you're in whose office? I don't understand. Conceptually, that is lost on me. But for but I found it so helpful to have a structure of prayer. And so I've gone through, and then particularly when it comes to, it's got these kind of broad prayers that are call and response. And so I take my time going through them, having prepared myself in the build up to that. And then at the end, it gives it time for either open prayer or prayer in silence. And that's the time that I take then to pray through the particular things that are on the prayer list and the particular situations that we're thinking about, and then I round that up by praying the prayer of the Eastern Church, which is in the Book of Common Prayer as well. And it's a prayer that I've just fallen in love with. So little things like that have been really, really helpful for me. But it's a struggle. How about you, Greg? Have you been finding it?
Fine, I'm grand. I mean, no, I'm interested, Scott, though, like in that, because you're right. I think there's like it's almost like when the normal, we're now in a new norm, but previous COVID lockdown, you know, there was like, you knew you had meetings at X, Y, and Z, you knew you had to be places X, Y, Z. So you go, okay, in order to have a good rhythm of life, I need to get up, and for some people get up at 6:30 and pray. For some people it's get up at 10:30 and pray. It just depends on your lifestyle. But you always, people try to, and I'm not talking about quiet times. I've passed that decades ago. That guilt that comes with, if I don't get my quiet time, God doesn't love me. You know,
whoa, what?
Which is absolutely.
Well, Al's got to write a new sermon series.
Hey. Roll on May, baby.
But it's that thing that, how do we pray without ceasing? You know, it's by being prayer to others and by participating. But how do we actually take that time? And you're right. I can look at my day and go, I've worked for 10 hours today, but I'm not taking any time at all for my physical, emotional, spiritual, or mental well-being. How did that happen? You know, I've got all the time in the world. So how in the world? So it's almost like now I'm trying to realign what should be going on. I was talking to my son about this yesterday, that there's a difference between a groove and a rut, you know, and I think that, you know, they sound like the same thing, but when you separate them out, you know, a rut is that kind of lull, that bad weather, you know, and a groove, you know, is, you know, it can be that rhythm. But the difference between a groove and a rut to me is direction and flow. And then what's flowing, are we flowing in the right direction? And so I personally have been trying to be more patient with myself in finding that flow, finding that new rhythm in this new norm, finding that new groove as such, because man, like it'd be very easy just to get mad at myself, frustrated with myself, get quite down about what's going on, feel disconnected, beat myself up about, why aren't you learning more? Why aren't you praying more? Why aren't you leaving this isolation as a monk, you know, like in my posture, my interior posture. But it's but I'm trying to just practice more patience with myself. I'm trying to be more gentle with myself. So if I wake up, and like how Al was saying, I wake up and I'm like, you know, I'm feeling a bit funky today. You know, I think instead of getting into my work, I'm going to go for a run, or watch the new Michael Jordan Netflix series, Last Dance, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like giving myself permission to not do what might be typically prescribed to do. But what's helping me, like practically, running helps me a lot. I've always, like, it doesn't need to be long. It doesn't need to be fast. You know, if you've ever seen me do my marathons, you'll understand that one. But like, I'll get out for, it could be 2K, it could be 5K, but whatever. It helps me just clear my my mind, get my body in a different space. It helps me think through things, process things. It makes me realize that, you know, the world is still a beautiful place, and I still am here, and you know, and because I can get quite, the cloud can kind of descend on me too, and I'm like, oh. But I get out and run by putting on my gear and getting out the door. It helps me a lot. So that's something very practical. You know, I've taken to, like, you know, if the sun's shining and the kids are in the garden, which is literally right here next to my window, that, you know, that I'll stop and I'll go outside with a cup of coffee and try to sit on the blanket with them. Just, I couldn't do that in my normal work day, or maybe I could, but I've not chosen to do that in my normal work day. But that also helps break it up a bit, because different ideas and thoughts and humor and, are popping off and stuff like that. Recently I signed up for, I don't know if you've heard of this person. What's her name? Sulika Jawad. She has a thing called the Isolation Journals. And basically she every day sends you like a little story from a friend of theirs who's an author or a creative and artist. And then the thing I like most is that she has a thing she thinks at the bottom called today's prompt. And so the other day a prompt was, what's a memory of a collective ritual inherited or invented that was meaningful or formative to some part of your identity? Write about it. Who was there? What was the activity? What were the words that were used? What time of year was it? How did it make you feel? And years later, how might it have shaped you? And so you just stop and go, oh, that's interesting. So it lifts me out of my headspace that I was in, or the guilt that I was feeling, or frustration, or whatever. And I started thinking about, that, I loved when I did that thing in 1989. And you kind of go to a place, and it actually literally lifts you. And so it's called the Isolation Journal, and it's just a free thing online. But
That's very cool.
I'm also trying to find little nudges that exist throughout the incredible creative world we live in that can assist me and growing in the midst of a time where I feel like I could just like slump. I want to grow. I don't want to slump. I want to grow.
It's funny actually when you're talking about growing. One of the things I found my mind going into is reflective mode. So actually kind of going back and thinking over like very much those sort of things, or things that have shaped or molded me, like it's 2020. And I know we've made the jokes in relation to all those churches that started off with their 2020 spiritual vision at the beginning of the year.
That was you,
here
Al.
we are.
That was you.
Well, we did it in 2019, always ahead of the game. But the whole idea of here we are, 2020, we're going to do this, and yet no one predicted this. No one saw this coming, and it's so different.
Bill Gates did, but yeah.
Well, okay.
Bill Gates did.
Did he really?
2015.
Oh, actually, and so
he did TED
Obama.
Talk. He did a TED Talk in 2015.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And he talked about this. Wow. Okay.
Pandemics.
Anywho, but in this season, I've been very much kind of reflecting back on different things in relation to for what has shaped me. And one of the things I did a couple of weeks ago was kind of reorganizing my library and books and stuff. I've been going through and thinking, here are now a list of things I want to read through. These that I need to remind myself of what this meant 10, 15, 2 years ago, and what it means now. Now, I will also say I found a whole lot of books that I would vehemently disagree with, but I wouldn't dump them because
ours, Greg.
I was gonna say yours actually. Scott was far more inclusive. He's talking to you, Scott. He's talking to you, Scott.
I mean, this
Broken Still is the book that you and I are going to write together.
Oh, Closer Broken. But it's reminding me of where things were, and actually having that reflection has been really helpful in kind of going, so why am I here? What has shaped me to get to here? Because even some of the junk from the past in thinking that has shaped me for who I am today, why I would be so against, or why I would think, this is okay. And if someone's in this particular zone, it's okay, because you can get out of it. God's bigger than that, so it's kind of, it's good having those moments of, not just looking for the new creative, what can be done, but actually kind of like, I have so much material that I actually need to use what is already here. Like I'm not dissing your vibe, Greg, in relation to kind of finding, because I know that is where you want to see what's happening today, what's going on for tomorrow.
Well, ironically, the thing I was discussing, the Isolation Journal, is literally talking about what you're now talking about, which is looking back. Yeah. So I mean, it's so new things can also point to reflection and learning as well.
Yeah, and I think for me that it's been one thing, really enjoying it, and even the conversations with the kids. Like I read something funny yesterday. Some woman had told her daughter that she was older than Google, and the daughter's mind just, what? How can you be older than Google? But actually I know, but all these conversations that are actually happening within families or with members that you have in relation to, what was this like? Anything like this happened when you were a kid, or all these reflective and even kind of bringing those memories to the forefront now, saying, so how do you use that? How do you deal with that today in helping you move forward? And also, like, I think spiritually, not having it to be like Scott, when you were saying about how do I pray, and we can jump in with the joke of like, well, you start with dear Lord and end with amen. You'll get to that in third year of college, but it's the whole idea of we're learning how to have this present relationship with God in a very different way that actually gives far more understanding to how Christians of old walked and journeyed and sojourned in ways that actually we talk and we preach and I would never, and here we are.
That's actually, yeah, I was just going to say that's one of the things that's actually been on my mind is the ways in which they would divide and commemorate different segments of their journey. So very often, like crossing the River Jordan, they build an altar and they name the altar, and naming the altar is about remembering the journey, but realizing that they have entered into a new chapter. And when time is beginning to blend together, like kind of micro versions of that kind of do make sense, switching up your surroundings, switching up your activities, switching up your body posture, switching up your movement, so many different things that can actually help us divide Alan's been watching his bless exercise video.
That's great. I think that altars, I used to speak about altars all the time because I'm really fascinated with the concept of it, like you're saying, and that they were created to, to remember something. But I think it's quite fascinating that this day and age, that we don't want to. It just seems like the altar over the last couple centuries has become the place where people stop. Instead of a place where instead of remembering what happened there and then moving forward, moving on. And most likely, it's very rare that you would ever go backwards to look at an altar. You keep moving forward. That altar was for people to come across and go, "Hey, what happened here? I remember. We crossed. You would cross the Jordan.
You build it and leave it behind. And if you ever find in a situation that whatever you're facing now pushes you so far back that it pushes you to a place of remembrance, it gives you the energy to go back forward.
Yeah, and it's like, or you're just going in circles. And I think that it's quite interesting now that I don't want to go too much into this, but it's interesting now that altar continues to be the center of what people do in modern
worship, ecclesiology.
Worship and orthodoxy, and that's the center of it. When actually that should be left. We're remembering to move forward, people. So I think you're right, though. On a daily basis or weekly basis, it's good to reflect on where we've been, so that we can move forward with that memory of it and the learning from it. And carry it with us, but not carry it with us. We're not carrying this big, heavy stone thing. We're carrying the lightness of what it is to have moved on from something, remembering it without, it's still part of who we are, but it's not the weight that it was when we built it originally,
But it is interesting as well when we think about our identity, all the things that we would say, well, this is who I am. And when all these things now have been stripped away, who we are in this moment, in this scene of, well, this is a fascinating concept now. Like I've always said, I want to be a better dad or a better husband. No better time. And in these ways, it's trying to figure out what identity has been fighting with one another, that actually it should not be a fight. It should actually be going back to that altar of saying, okay, here are things that my life has been built on, and I can look back and reflect and I can think and be grateful. But also I share that gratitude. I share that with those around, and I have gratitude for, I said this a couple of weeks ago, like our postman. We're having great old chats every single time he comes. I catch him at the door, or Easter eggs or chocolate bars, or here you go, thanks very much for all that you're doing. As I say that, he's just walked up, and so there's all these different things in relation to how we connect with people that maybe would never have connected with before. And it gives us a very different perspective, even in, well, you know what, I do have it so good. And the contentment, I need to actually practice that more, you know, as to how to be content with what there is and what we have.
Yeah, I think that it's just important to be aware of the fact that I could just exist in this time. And I need to be, like I said, I need to be patient with myself and not trying to achieve. But at the same time, I do want to look back and go, you know, yeah, I think I learned a little bit more about myself and my family. And, you know, I learned a little bit more from books that haven't picked up in a long time. Like this morning, I picked up, this book is very much along the lines of identity and vulnerability and something like that. But looking back from the sages that came before us, I don't know if have you read Raids on the Unspeakable by Thomas Merton?
No. I've actually never even heard of it.
Yeah, it's a cracker book, but he digs back in. But I was just literally digging through my bookshelf, like you were saying, Al, and I was like, I haven't picked that up in ages. And I picked it up this morning. I'm like, wow, vulnerability, identity. Man, I should really be reading this book. And so I started reading it. And it's allowing, again, walking around my house, allowing myself the time to go, what's going on around me? Instead of arriving in at the end of a workday and going, oh, I just want to eat and watch a show, which is okay too. But I'm able to kind of walk around my house and go, I think I'll fix that door today. I think I'll learn a new skill. I think I'll pick up that book. I think I'll take the dog for another. I have to say WALK because it's sitting next to me here. It goes,
oh yeah,
freak out. You know, stop. No.
Does he respond to the same? If we say the word treat, Levi goes nuts, and so Andrew every now and again in his tease mode, he go, "Oh, look at the tree!"
Oh,
and there's this like, huh?
Yeah, that's so cruel. But also, I was going to say that, like, friends of, I know we're running close to time, but friends of mine, I think I talked about it before, in the States, they have a company called Evolve Studios, and they did a short film called Distance, right, which was basically made literally just before the lockdown happened in America, and it's just a short film, and it's American and the way it looks at what's going on, but the guts of it though is that it's never too late or it's never too early for reconciliation. And I'm thinking, even in these times, these are the perfect times. I mean, like we've talked about this before, that times of pressure are great for reconciliation. You know, funerals, weddings, time where there's like a lot of weight on us. And so I'm also looking around me going, I wonder, you know, how am I doing with all my family members? You know, what does it look like to try to be a little bit more patient with them and reconcile some differences there that might exist or might not exist, you know? And so I think that it's just, it's a fascinating time to be able to reflect, but also to patiently react to that reflection.
It's funny actually. A couple of nights ago, so Naomi has been going through all these different questions and thoughts. She's been going through the Book of Romans. She goes, "Dad, we need to talk. This sounds nuts." And in the conversation, and
go ahead, Scott. You have a joke?
We were talking about Say that again.
Greg, we lost you there.
What did you say?
Who?
You.
Greg.
Oh, I just said I'm sure Scott has a joke there.
Oh, with that.
That was all.
But we were talking about how, you know, consequences from different actions, and sometimes we have to go through different things. And Naomi was like, "Well, it's like that time whenever we bumped into Scott's wife, and she was talking away, and she was like, 'So what school are you going to?' He goes, 'Oh, I'm going to go to New Park. Apparently, they have a fantastic music thing, and it's so much better than what they have in EGS, and I'm really looking forward to it.' And I just sat there and I just watched the whole thing where Naomi's like, 'Yeah,' and Christina's all like, 'Yeah, this is what I do in EGS,' and Naomi's like, oh, and it was a fantastic moment for Naomi just to kind of go, Yeah, I need to think maybe sometimes before.
That's a wonderful way for her to learn tough lessons in a safe environment.
Yes,
because
absolutely.
you could definitely be in real trouble if you said that in another space.
But I think that was the beauty of it, kind of in knowing Christina and knowing Naomi and kind of going, this is funny. I mean, here's a kid who is sharing their heart in looking for the good in this massive shift and change in their life, and I'm going, this is awesome. This is a great teachable moment. But it's like that in seeing, Greg, I think you're so right. Like, even having the quality time, now there's no excuse. There really is no excuse. And unfortunately, I think there are some who will look for it still. Like I'm aware, even for everybody kind of feeling of their own self-importance. And I say that as a rector, where we can think, well, the needs of everybody else.
Who obviously is very self-important.
Obviously. I mean, clearly. But like one of the things that I've been doing is, even with the devotionals that I'm doing for the church every day, I record them in one day. So I'm not making it my devotional. I'm not making it my space of, well, I'm doing this for everybody else, and so I'm getting it too. We're actually saying, no, this is good and this is a blessing, and I will continue doing it for as long as, but this is not my devotional. This is a gift, and I wanted this to be a blessing to others, and I'm loving it. But I'm able to get these done in 3, maybe 4 hours, get them done. And then for the rest of the week, it's not taking me, or I'm not using that as a justification of, oh, well, I have to do this, I have to do that.
Yeah. Well, you're not using the way in which you serve others as a way of outsourcing your own need, or using it as an excuse not to have them. And I think what you're saying about reconciliation is very important. And initially you said that, at this time there is no excuse, and I find that funny, because I've heard that said a lot in this quarantine, but mostly by like influencers on Instagram who are like, "You've got no excuse," like there is a yeah, Greg, like
yeah, like all your social media feeds there, Greg. Yeah.
So, but people who are constantly putting pressure on other people to be like, and it's usually people selling something to make someone else more efficient. So making them care more about their goals is what is required to do that. So they've been like, oh, there's no excuse, not to write that play, or to get your bikini body, or whatever it is, like whatever the pressure is that they're putting on people. I think that's such an interesting shift to be like, yeah, there's no excuse not to make peace in the place where there needs to be peace.
Yeah.
Because that they're at home, they're going to be able to take your call. There's something about the fact that being confronted with what feels like an existential crisis should bring us back to the place of remembering what matters. So I love the idea that there's no excuse to do the things that matter, but there's also no pressure to do the things that don't. Like one of the other helpful things that I have that I've seen on Twitter over the last few days is there was one particular tweet was basically saying, remember when you used to say, oh, if I could just get some time off, these are the things I would do. This is not that time off.
That's good,
because it's not the same thing.
That's good.
And it was just reminding people, it was like, you are not trying to work from home and maintain productivity. You're trying to survive a global pandemic. Now that it happens that expresses itself in you being at home, and it does require you to work, but this is not, this is what your first temptation to interpret this as is. Your body knows what's happening here, so allow yourself to feel that and step away from the pressure. And I think that says a lot about then the prioritization, is that of course do great things and create, but not as a result of pressure. Do them from the abundance of what's happening within you, but do prioritize the idea of peace, of connection, of support, of reaching out to others. One of the things I find very helpful, because I can become very insular minded when I go into like hermit mode. It's a switch on my back. You just flick it, and my beard drops down another 6 inches, and I go fully bald. But when I go into hermit mode, I can very often forget that there are others outside of the screen of my laptop. But I'm getting text messages from local people in the area with shopping lists, asking me to pick up their shopping. And that's so helpful because it reminds me, like if I have to call that person or going around to their house, it reminds me that other people are living different stories and that they have different needs. And if nothing else, it teaches me gratitude, but hopefully it also teaches me humility and service. And so if I can figure out ways to cultivate those character elements rather than just skills during time off or time at home, then I think I'll be doing well by the time this is over.
Great. Awesome.
I think that's Thus saith the Lord.
Or
Scott.
Or are 3 bearded guys in their homes.
yeah. That's the real problem with this pandemic is everyone's starting a flipping podcast. First.
Tell me about it. Tell the guy who 3 years ago started a PhD on spiritual formation in digital age. Yeah, at the time it was like, that's kind of quirky. Now it's like, who isn't doing this?
All the televangelists, they were way ahead of the game.
I still want to be one. Anyways, be patient with yourselves, guys. Nice talking to you.
You too, mate.
Yeah, you too. Be good. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Peace out. Now, I will also say I found a whole lot of books that I would vehemently disagree with, but I wouldn't dump them because...
Ours, Greg.
I was going to say yours, actually. Scott was far more inclusive. He's talking to you, Scott. He's talking to you, Scott.
I mean, this
Broken Still is the book that you and I are going to write together.
Oh, Closer Broken.